In today's video, we're going to be working on a 99 Pontiac Grand Prix that's having a couple issues with an engine misfire, has poor acceleration, and in addition, the catalytic converter is glowing red hot after it warms up. So what you need to do, if you're having a similar issue on your vehicle, last thing you want to do is go replace exhaust components, and that's actually what was happening on this vehicle. There was an exhaust shop that was ready to spend $800, $900 to replace the converter and some other exhaust components, but I'm not convinced that's the issue, and I'm going to show you how you can rule out all these other issues with some of these simple gauges up here to make sure you're replacing the right parts on your vehicle to make sure you fix it right the first time. So some of the basic things, if you're going to try to diagnose something like this, that's an exhaust back pressure gauge. This is a fuel pressure gauge. This is a coil pack and spark plug tester, so we can test the spark. Then we also have a multimeter where we're going to test different things on the fuel injectors to make sure we don't have any issues there. Obviously, if you have this scanner, this will help you get to the bottom of, what you're dealing with a little bit quicker, but it's honestly really not required. But I'll walk through each one of these scenarios on what I would test first if you're having issues with your catalytic converter getting red hot like this one is here today. So the first thing, if you have a scanner, it's always good just to get the codes just to see if there's anything that stands out. So the three codes that we have here, we have a mass airflow sensor code. Both the upstream and the downstream behind the converter down there both have a code on, and we also have an evap code. We can rule out the evap code almost immediately because that's probably not going to be affecting the issue that we're having here. But some of the mass airflow sensor and the O2, they can cause problems here, but what I want to get to the bottom of is why this thing is running so rich, because even if those sensors are bad, a lot of these GM cars and a lot of more modern cars, they all have the same concept. If one of these sensors are bad, there's almost a default setting the computer would use. And if we look at how red hot that converter is, the default setting is not going to be causing that bad of an issue. So I'm not real convinced either of those are bad. So the first thing I did on this motor is I checked the back pressure on the converter, and all you have to do, and I'm not going to do it in this video, I did it in a separate video, so see the link above if you're interested in how to do this on this motor here. But I took this OTC gauge. You don't have to get one this expensive. There's other ones out there that are a little bit cheaper. This is a little bit better quality because this is all stainless steel braided line here versus some of the hoses, but just be careful with the hoses. They can melt on the exhaust. But when you hook this up, essentially what you're looking for back pressure from the converter is at idle. If it's underneath 1 PSI, that's considered okay. If you rev that motor up, and as long as it's under 3 PSI, that's also considered okay, where you don't have any restrictions in the exhaust. If you do those tests and you have it way up here or a lot higher than that, or it's all over the place, there's a good chance you might have an issue with the converter. But on this one, it tested okay. And again, if you're interested in seeing that test, see the link above. But we did pretty quickly rule out the converter is not a problem on this. So we're going to kind of move on to some of the other stuff here. So now that we confirmed the exhaust isn't the problem, and we do know that it's running rich based on what our scanner is telling us, that's telling us that it's dumping fuel in the exhaust, and that's why it's getting red hot. So something within the motor is doing that, whether it's the air, fuel, spark mixture. So the next thing we're going to try here is we're going to test the fuel pressure. Now, every single car has a different fuel pressure. So on this 3800 motor, for the years between 97 and 2000, whether you have the VIN 1, which is the supercharged, or this VIN K, which is just the regular 3800, with the key on and the engine off, the PSI should be 48 to 55. If you start the vehicle, it should be about 3 to 10 PSI less than that number. Then if you have a 2001 to 2004, the numbers are just a little bit higher. So it's with the engine off but the key forward, it's going to be 53 to 59 PSI. And again, when it's running, it's going to be 3 to 10 PSI less than that number. So what we're going to do here is locate the fuel pressure regulator, and there's just going to be a little valve on the end here. So remove that cap. Then we're going to press that little Schrader valve in there just to kind of get some of that pressure out of there. Make sure you have a shop towel or something there. And after we have that, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to hook up our fuel pressure gauge here. All right, so now that that's connected, we're going to go ahead and just turn the key forward, and then we're going to monitor our gauge here. All right, so with the key forward, we can see that we are holding a pressure there And what you need to monitor here is just make sure it's not slowly dropping down. So it is maintaining pressure there. So we'll go ahead and we'll start the vehicle, and it should go down just a little bit, but not much. And we can see that it is holding roughly around 40, 42, 43 there. So it seems to be running okay from the fuel pressure. Again, if you see that dropping, then that's when you got to, maybe adjust something with that fuel pressure regulator. And as you can see there, the motor is missing pretty bad because it's causing the whole vehicle to shake. So we did confirm that the fuel pressure and the fuel pressure regulator is okay based on those PSI numbers. Now, if you did that test and your fuel pressure was dropping or it wasn't holding steady, this fuel pressure regulator is a pretty common problem on this 3800 motor. And all you got to do to replace these is just pull this vacuum hose off. There's a snap ring in there, so just take your snap ring pliers, squeeze that ring. You can remove your regulator, put your new one in there, put the ring back in there, and reattach the vacuum hose. Then you can retest it and just see if that helped it. I've also replaced a decent amount of fuel pumps on these motors, but typically with the fuel pumps on this, it just doesn't run at all. And you can have somebody go in the back of the vehicle back there where the trunk and the back seat area is, and you can turn the key forward, and typically you can hear when you turn it forward, you can hear it priming. And that's a quick way to just kind of test that it is operating. Yes, there could be other problems with the fuel pump, but if you're having a fuel pressure drop, I would first replace that regulator because I've replaced a decent amount of those over the years. The next thing I would test on the fuel is the fuel injectors. And what you need to do here on this 3800 motor is you just need to disconnect the connector. So on this one here, you're just going to push that up like that, then pull that plug out. And if you had an engine code where it's telling you the specific cylinder that's misfiring, I would start there. And all we're going to be doing is we're going to be just taking each one of those off, and we're going to test the ohms with our multimeter here to just see where they're at. Now, every single engine or every single fuel injector, they all have a different rating for the vehicle, but you're just going to go through and you're going to test the ohms on each one of these fuel injectors to see if one is off compared to the rest of them. So if you're curious on what the cylinders are, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that order. So if you have a misfire in cylinder 1, obviously start with cylinder 1, etc. there. All right, so we got our plug disconnected. And if you look in there, you're going to see those two prongs on that injector. So right here and right here. So we're simply going to take both prongs on our multimeter and we're going to test that. So first, set our gauge to ohms here. In the range that we're looking for on this motor, so it's going to be roughly 11.8 to 12.6 is normal. With that said, if it's really cold, so it's only 15 degrees out here today, around that 11 to 14 is perfectly normal. But what we're going to do, we're going to first test this first fuel injector here, and you're going to go through and you're going to test each individual one, and you're looking for one that's not within that range or one that's way off. Now, one comment here, depending on your vehicle, those numbers are completely different on a lot of vehicles, so you might have to look it up, but on this 3800 motor, that's the range you need to be in. So we'll go ahead and we'll test this first one here. All right, so we can see that one was at 11.4, so that's perfectly normal. So just do that for all 6 of your cylinders. If one of those fuel injectors, again, they're off, then there's a good chance you need to replace that fuel injector. And to replace that, all you need to do is there's just a couple screws or bolts holding this fuel rail down here. So you can simply raise that up on the end and you can get that fuel injector out if you find one that's not within that range. Now, one other test you can do if you have a bidirectional scanner is you can do a fuel injector balance test. But honestly, if you do that ohms test, typically on this 3800, at least the ones that I've replaced over the years, a lot of times those ohms are just way off and you can very easily replace it. But, if you have a bidirectional scanner, a lot of them have the option. I'll give you a picture on the screen of my tool here, but essentially you just check each one of the cylinders and make sure there's no pressure, difference on the one versus the other. And that can also give you an idea if the fuel injector is bad. But if you don't have one of these more expensive bidirectional scanners to do that test, do that ohms test, because a lot of times on this 3800 motor, that will help you identify which fuel injector is bad if you have one that's bad on your vehicle. All right, so now that we confirmed that the exhaust is fine, our fuel pressure is fine, and all of our fuel injectors are fine, the last couple of things you need to check. So the air filter box over here is also something you should check. You know, you'd be lucky if it's actually plugged and that's your issue, but you know, you should probably check that as well, and especially the part on the front where it allows the air to get in the motor. But ours is fine, so that's not the issue. The last thing we're going to test is the spark. As I mentioned there before, you need fuel, you need air, and you need spark. So to test the spark, what we're going to be using is this InLine tester, and I'll put some links in the description to all these tools that I've used here today. But it's a pretty basic setup where you're just going to connect this over there to the coil pack, put the other one here on the spark plug. And you can also test individually down in there on the spark plug, and you can run this up to the spark plug wire to see if you can figure out what's going on. But essentially all you're looking for on this is going to light up when there's a spark going through there. If it doesn't light up, that's telling you we have something wrong with one of those plugs, one of the coil packs, the spark plug wire, etc. there. Alright, so to get this hooked up, just disconnect one of your spark plug wires. Whatever you do, don't disconnect all these because there's a specific firing order. You need to make sure you get those lined back up correctly. Then just take the one end here, and then take the other end and connect it here to your spark plug. Then we're going to go in the vehicle and we're going to start it, and we're going to monitor this in here to make sure that that's lighting up to confirm that we are getting spark to each one of those cylinders. Now I'll give you a little hint here real quick. We did figure out on our scanner that it was giving us a misfire count in cylinders 1 and cylinders 4. So again, on the order of this motor, it's going to be cylinder 1, cylinder 2, cylinder 3, 4, 5, 6 in that order. If you do that, or your scanner is telling you that there's 2 next to each other, sometimes that indicates you potentially have a head gasket or something over there on that side. Yes, you could get lucky and you got 2 fuel injectors over here doing it, but typically if you have them closer together, it's usually not good news. But if they're diagonal like this one, we come down here, we can see our coil packs. This one coil pack is cylinder 1 and cylinder 4. That happens to be the same 2 cylinders that are giving us that misfire count, 2, 5, 3, 6 there, etc. Now when we did hook that up, we didn't get any Misfire 301, 302 codes yet. Now maybe if you ran this thing for a really long time, eventually it would have caught up, but it wasn't to the point where it had that code come on. But our bidirectional scanner, we were able to look at those misfire counts, and that's how we were able to get it. So not all scanners would have been able to identify that, but if you just do this simple test here and go through all 6 of them, you could find this without even using this as well. But again, let me show you what it looks like here with one of these not working, one of these coil packs. And one comment here real quick, just don't be touching down there over here. You know, that coil pack is producing a spark, so you don't obviously want to electrocute yourself here. But we'll stay up here and we'll just make sure and we'll monitor that to see if we see that that's lighting up on this coil pack. Alright, so if you look there, there's nothing lighting up in there. So we can tell that that coil pack is not providing any spark over here to that spark plug wire or the spark plug. So we'll shut the vehicle off and I'll hook it up to one of these that is working to show you what it should have done. So we'll take this one off the top here. Again, connect our little gauge here. So then if we look up here on this one, we can see that that light is lighting up in there, and that's telling us it's producing a good spark coming out of that coil pack. Versus the one we did down here, there was nothing there and it wasn't lighting up at all. So we confirmed that that coil pack is not working correctly. Now if you did each one of those coils and they're all were good, sometimes it's as simple as the spark plug or the spark plug wire. So again, if you have the cylinder 1 and cylinder 4, you can either swap some spark plugs, or if you're due, to get spark plugs done on your vehicle, replace them, and you might be surprised that would work. But a lot of times on these, you can rule out these coil packs really quick by this little cheap little tool here. And again, I'll put links in the description to all these, but we'll go ahead and we'll replace this real quick, and we'll just confirm that that fixed our problem here today. So we'll first disconnect the battery here. Then we'll remove both of the spark plug wires. Just pay attention to which one goes where, because again, you don't want to mix those up. Then you're just going to have 2 bolts on both sides, and it's going to be a 5.5. You can sometimes get a 6 mil to work, but just be careful that you don't strip it. So there's the first bolt. Then remove the one on the other side as well. Then you can go ahead and remove the coil pack. Then we'll take our new one, and I'm just going to be using the Delphi one here. If you have anything down in here, just kind of clean that off a little bit. Then you're going to notice these 2 areas here on your plug. Just make sure it aligns with that prong there. Just make sure it fully seats in there, then we'll tighten up both of those bolts again. Alright, so once you confirm that's on there tight, go ahead and reconnect your spark plug wires here. Reconnect our battery. We'll leave this one off here for a minute because we're going to put our tester back on there to confirm if it now works. Alright, so now we do have spark, as you can see there, so we confirmed that that did fix our problem by simply replacing the coil pack. Alright, so wrap up here. If you replace those coils and it still doesn't work, another common problem is this ignition control module underneath here. It's essentially the plate that's sitting underneath these coil packs. That, in addition, there's a ground, and I'll give you some pictures of both of these. I did one of these about a year ago, and that ground was broke. So check that ground, and also make sure there's no corrosion on that bottom plate in your control module there, because those typically can cause this exact same problem where that's not giving these coils spark. So if you replaced it and you're still not getting spark, check out the control module, or definitely check out that ground as well. And one other thing that can also cause this problem is the crankshaft position sensor. It's just down there by the harmonic balancer. But typically when that one goes bad, you get a hard start or a no start, and you might get this. But on this one, it was very easy to always start. It just had problems with keeping the number 1 and number 4 cylinders have spark. So we were pretty confident it wasn't the crankshaft position sensor. But again, that is something that you need to check as well. All right, so then we'll just go back into our scanner here and we'll just double check. We do have the engine running. We just want to verify that we don't have those 2 misfires. And if you remember earlier, we had a misfire in cylinder 1. We also had it in cylinder 4. So we confirmed that our coil pack did fix that misfire. So we'll go back. And then we'll just check the fuel trim here and make sure that's closed. Because what happens when your engine's first running, it's open, but within seconds it really should be closed, and that's when it's going to start using the input from the sensors in order to determine the fuel mixture. So we just want to verify that it did that. Okay, we see it's closed. It does say rich there, but if you watch this, it'll go, there you go. It goes from lean to rich, and it's trying to find that balance in there. But as long as that's closed, we confirm, you know, that it is reading the sensors, so everything should be good there. So we confirmed that that did fix our problem. All right, well, hopefully this video helped you out. If you guys are struggling with an engine misfire on your 3800 motor, you know, again, as I mentioned there earlier in the video, this one was at an exhaust shop, and they were determined that they were going to replace $700-800 of a catalytic converter and some other exhaust components because it was glowing red hot, when the reality is this thing was just running rich because it had no spark for those 2 cylinders. So it was just dumping fuel on the motor, and then that fuel was going directly in the exhaust, and that's why it was getting so hot. So again, we verified there was nothing wrong with the converter. It was a simple coil pack up here that needed to be replaced. But again, if you go through these scenarios that I did, whether you're checking the fuel injectors, the fuel pressure, the back pressure, and over here, between one of those typically are some of the common problems that you're going to see on an engine misfire on this motor. So hopefully, if you guys are having a similar problem, hopefully this video helped you guys out. And if it did, please give me the thumbs up. If you're interested in more content like this, please hit that subscribe. But again, I hope this helped you out, and thanks for watching.